Assalamu alaikum, Canada. I just want you to know how honored and humbled to be here with all of you. And actually, I came on a very early morning flight from Austin, Texas. And I was very sleepy from waking up very early. And I was excited to be here, but now I'm even more excited to be here than I was when I got invited to be here. So the topic that was given to me by the convention organizers was to talk about Muslim women's rights in Islam. And I want to be very clear, sisters and brothers, that I am not a theologian, nor am I a scholar of Islam. So let's make that very clear. But I think that I am a representation of the full rights that Islam gives to women. There is nothing that I am doing, sisters and brothers, that is in spite of or despite my religion. I am a strong, unapologetic Muslim woman who speaks truth to power because my deen allows me to speak truth to power. I remember once at ISNA, I shared a hadith. It is a hadith that many of you have heard many times by your Islamic teachers, by imams across the country.
Did you know there are over 200 million orphans worldwide? Every day, 5,760 more children become orphans. Every one of those orphans is born full of potential, but they won't get there without your help. Would you help an orphan reach their dreams? Sponsor an orphan now for only $1 per day. Visit ICNAReliefCanada.ca for details and to donate. ICNA Relief Canada, serving humanity since 1997.
And it was about a story of a man who asked our beloved Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him, what is the best form of jihad or struggle? And our beloved Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him, said that the best form of jihad or struggle is a word of truth to a tyrannical ruler. Our beloved Prophet didn't say a word of truth only by a man, or a word of truth only by a Muslim man. He said a word of truth to a tyrannical ruler, which for me meant a word of truth from any Muslim, to stand up to those who choose to oppress us and other communities. When I think about Islam historically, and I think about the things that we do right now as Muslims, so for example, in the days of our beloved Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him, there was no barriers between men and women in the masjid. There was no walls, there were no curtains, the women weren't in the basement, the women were not in a small room in the back. This is not how our beloved Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him, worked within the community that he was a part of at that time. The first convert to Islam was a woman. Sisters and brothers, women in Islam have been business owners, entrepreneurs. They have been scholars from hundreds of years ago. They were women on the battlefield supporting the men. We are part of a religion that centers and empowers Muslim women. My religion tells me that if I work and I bring in an income, I don't have to share my income with my husband. That I can keep my own income. I know that I am part of a deen where my beloved Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him, talked about the education of women. That when we are educated, when we carry degrees, it is not because we are westernized or because we are Americanized. We are educated and are educating our daughters because our deen tells us to educate our daughters. So let us be very clear, sisters and brothers, who we are and what our deen preaches. We have some friends of mine who are outside, very interesting kind of friends of mine. And the reason why they are interesting is this. The reason why they don't like people like me, sisters and brothers, is because they don't want to see empowered Muslim women. And when they see Muslim women, particularly those of us in hijab who are articulate and eloquent and wear our hijab and are unapologetically Muslim, and we unapologetically defend our deen, you know what we do? We shatter their propaganda campaigns. They want people to think that Muslim women are oppressed, that our deen oppresses us, that our deen tells us you should not come to a Muslim convention, You need to be sitting in a kitchen somewhere. That our deen tells us that we should not educate women. No, in fact, I am a representation of all the beauty and the rights that my deen offers me. And this is why every single day when I wake up in the morning, I will do everything by any means necessary to defend my deen, defend my prophet, defend my community, defend my Islamic institutions, because I have every right to do that. So when I told you the story about the hadith when our beloved prophet told us how to stand up to tyrannical rulers, and as you know now in the United States of America, we have a tyrannical ruler. Very unfortunate situation we found ourselves in. Something happened at ISNA. This was not this year, last year. I say this hadith, everything's fine. I say it at the convention, everybody claps, we all go to the next session, everything's fine. And then when I wake up after the ISNA convention is over, people in our community were sending me text messages. Sister Linda, are you okay? Sister Linda, are your children okay? Where are you? Do you need to be somewhere to be safe? And I didn't even understand what was going on. And I said, you know what? Something must be going on and I need to find out. This was very early in the morning. I went to Twitter, because you know if something's happening, it has to be on Twitter. So I went to Twitter and I found my name trending. Number 1, Linda Sarsour. Number 2, jihad. I said, oh, here we go. Then I had some very well-meaning dear brothers to me in the United States call me. They said, Sister Linda, we're calling to check on you. Inshallah, Sister Linda, you're okay. And if you need anything, please let us know. We are here to help you. But maybe, Sister Linda, maybe sometimes, you know, these people, they don't understand our deen. And sometimes there are words we use that maybe these people don't understand. You know, it scares them. So maybe we Muslims have to just be a little more careful. So I had 2 brothers call me. Sisters and brothers, my heart was shattered. And I love these brothers from the deepest of my heart, good brothers that have done so much for our community. But my heart was broken because what I sensed from what they were saying is that they had some fear in their hearts. And they really were worried about my own self-being or my well-being. So then I sat, sisters and brothers, I prayed, and I asked Allah to guide me in that moment. And I had to make a decision. I had 2 choices. One choice was that I was going to go out publicly and apologize and say to people, I'm so sorry that you misunderstand my religion. I'm sorry that I used the word that scared you. That was one choice that I had. And then my other choice was that I was going to double down, that I was going to stand up for myself, that I was going to stand up for our community and for our deen. Because in that moment, sisters and brothers, I realized that I was not going to allow anybody to define my deen for me or how I want to preach my deen or how I want to speak of my deen. Because we as Muslims, we do not tell Christians how to practice their faith. We do not tell Jews how to practice their faith, or Sikhs or Hindus or people of other faiths. Why would we as Muslims allow other people to dictate to us how we practice our faith in this country? What kind of message are we sending to our young people? It is not my job to change who I am, to be less Muslim, to make other people feel comfortable while my Lord disapproves of what I'm saying. My approval is from my Lord, not from people. If they want to understand my religion, well, they should study my religion. They should come to a masjid and listen to our sermons. They should come and sit with our Muslim student associations or come and join community service project with our ICNA sisters. Maybe they should come and realize that every country that we have come to, whether it be Canada or the United States of America, we have brought contributions to these nations. We are doctors and we are lawyers and we are engineers, we are professors, we are working people, we own companies, we are business owners. We are important and critical parts of the countries that we live in. Sisters and brothers, I'm here to say to you, and I came all the way to Canada to say this to you. after the election of our president in the United States of America, who will not be our president very long, we are sorry for the interruption. We had a little mistake that happened. And inshallah, we will never make that mistake again. We have a little interruption, but we're gonna fix it. But in the meantime, many Islamophobes and racists have been emboldened. Our administration has given them a free pass. So of course, people who are racist are gonna be more racist if the man who holds the highest office in the United States of America is an Islamophobe. And not only is he an Islamophobe, he is an Islamophobe, he is anti-women, he is anti-refugee, he's anti-immigrant, he's anti-basically everything that we are. So right now, in this moment in my country, I have a choice to make. I can sit back quietly and hope that this passes. And then I remember something else that has been preached to us. Oftentimes in the Muslim community, they only say the beginning part and they forget the second part. They say trust in Allah. But there's something that comes after trust in Allah. What's the thing that comes after trust in Allah? Tie your camel. Sisters and brothers, we in the Muslim community have a lot of camels to tie. So Allah, of course we trust Allah. Everything is in Allah's hands. But Allah also gave us what? He gave us talents and skills and intellect. So we can't just sit back and hope that everything is fine. We have to be able to be productive people. So in the meantime, in places like the United States, we are engaging in the political process. And you know who's at the forefront of the movements of the United States of America? Women are at the forefront of the movements. Muslim women are at the forefront of the movement. You know what's really crazy? As bad as the world is, you know Allah always gives us back gifts. When it is the darkest, He always brings us the light. Under a Trump administration, we are now, the Muslim community is sending two, not one, two Muslim American women to the US Congress. One of the Muslim women is a Somali refugee. She came to this country as a refugee, fleeing civil war, fleeing conflict and poverty. She came to this country as a child. She went to school, she went to university, she became an activist and an organizer, organizing with Muslims and Jews and white people and Latinos and all kinds of people. And then she ran for office. And people said, are they crazy? You think they're going to put a woman in hijab in Minnesota, in the state legislature of Minnesota? Yes, they did. Yes, we did in the United States. And then she ran for Congress after Keith Ellison stepped down from the US Congress to run for a different office. Sister Ilhan stood up as a Muslim woman in hijab, a Somali refugee from a country that Donald Trump has banned from coming to the United States. Look at the irony. Look at how Allah is sending a message. You may have banned people from the country of Somalia, but now we have a woman from Somalia that's going to the US Congress. And then a few states over, in the great state of Michigan, which borders Canada, we elected another Muslim woman to go to Congress. And this Muslim woman is very special. Not only is she a Muslim woman, she's also Palestinian. You don't want Palestinians in Congress. Sister Rashida is a firebrand. She has revolution in her blood. She has the blood of an oppressed people. This is a woman who always speaks truth to power, no matter what the consequences are. And that is the woman that is going to go stand in our behalf and on our behalf in the US Congress. So while you may be feeling a certain way, and I understand that sometimes we get maybe a little sad or a little depressed or a little betrayed or disappointed with the environment in which we live. Sisters and brothers, what we are experiencing in the United States, or even what you are experiencing in Canada, or what they experience as Muslims in France or in other parts of the West, is nothing, sisters and brothers, compared to what our beloved Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him, had to endure as he was trying to spread the beautiful and good and peaceful word of Islam. That's why I'm not afraid. This is nothing, sisters and brothers. This is a walk in the park in comparison to the things that our beloved Prophet, our role model, our example, had to endure. They threw garbage at him. They called him a liar, a magician. They ridiculed him. They humiliated him. They vilified him, sisters and brothers. And even throughout all of that, guess what happened? He was able to spread the message of our beautiful deen all over the world. There are 1.8 billion people, listen to me, sisters and brothers, 1.8 billion people in this world who call themselves Muslims. And guess what? A little over 50% of them are what? Women, Muslim women. Muslim women who are courageous and educated and eloquent all over the world. They pick and choose whatever photos they want, right? They pick and choose and create a narrative about us. We don't care what their narrative is about us. We don't need other people to tell our stories. We know how to tell our stories. We know the talent in our community. We know the Muslim women who are educated in our community, that have invented things, women in our community who are civil rights attorneys, who in fact are the attorneys who have been suing Donald Trump in the United States of America. They are women who are standing up to a tyrannical ruler in the United States of America. So I want you to know, sisters and brothers, that we do have a responsibility. And oftentimes these people, the ones you see outside, you know what they will say to me? They will say to me, go back to your country. The first thing I say to them is, my country is called Brooklyn, New York. And then after that, I say to people this. I say this to them. I have been here on the shores of North America and the United States of America before it was called the United States of America. Because we as Muslims also do not understand our history on these lands. Sisters and brothers, do you know that as Muslims, that you are connected to a lineage of enslaved African Muslims who were forced to come to the United States, to this large area we call now North America? Do you understand people who were living life, who had families in Africa? They had aspirations and dreams, and people came and they were sold as property, forced to come to this land. They lived under the watches of white slave masters. You know what I think about as a Muslim sometimes? I say to myself, how did 25 to 30% of enslaved people who were Muslims, who had to endure torture, whose wives and daughters were raped by white slave masters, people who were malnutrition, people who were beat by their slave masters to work for no money, who were in fact not treated like the beautiful creations of Allah that they were, but that they were not even human. How did they still believe there was a God? And then look at us generations later, we get to sit in this room here at this convention and call ourselves Muslims. It's not magic, sisters and brothers, that you came off an airplane in the 1960s to go to medical school, or your Indian grandfather came here to get his education, or your Palestinian grandfather came here fleeing occupation, or your Lebanese grandfather came here to leave a civil war and you just walked off the airplane and said, MashaAllah, Assalamu alaikum, I'm a Muslim. This is not how this happened. Somebody sacrificed for you to be here. Somebody had to give something up so you could be a Muslim in Canada or a Muslim in the United States of America. I think about the people before me who had to sacrifice much more than I have to sacrifice to be Muslim. And my question to my fellow Muslim sisters and brothers is, what are you sacrificing? What are you doing in this moment for generations of Muslims to come? I ask myself this question all the time. In fact, wallahi, I have this nightmare sometimes. And I have this nightmare 80 years from now, I have this nightmare of Muslim families sitting in their homes and asking each other questions like, why don't our women wear hijab? Why are our Islamic schools closed? Why are our masajid empty? Why are our children so afraid to tell people that they are Muslims? What were those Muslims doing 80 years ago? Why didn't those Muslims stand up for our right to be unapologetically Muslim? Why didn't those Muslims defend our rights to be who we are, to practice our religion freely in lands that claim to have religious freedom? So your responsibility is not just to yourselves in this moment. Your responsibility is to generations of Muslims to come. What will they look back at, sisters? Who are the people that they're going to read about? You know what I'm doing right now, sisters? I'm writing a book. I'm writing a book not just for Muslims, for everybody. But my intention is for Muslims. I don't know how long I have on this earth, sisters and brothers. Allahu A'lam. It could be 1 day, it could be 10 years, it could be 40 years. I want young Muslims 80 years from now to be able to pick up a book and say, MashaAllah, my lineage goes back to empowered Muslim American sisters who stood up for us, who defended our rights, who spoke truth to power. We have to, sisters and brothers, tell our stories now. Stand up now. Because what's going to happen is all these big, beautiful masajid that you built, the millions of dollars that we have raised to build the infrastructure and the brick and mortar is going to be for nothing. Because there's no reason to have a beautiful building that doesn't have people inside of it. I say this to people all the time, that we need institutions like ICNA. And we need to invest in these institutions. Because I always wonder, why is it that the opposition always has more resources than we do? They're always all well organized. They have a lot of money they put into politics. They're able to do a lot of media advocacy. Sisters and brothers, the opposition, the people who hate Muslims, they're not more intelligent than we are. They don't love their children more than we love ours. They don't love their faiths more than we love our faith. They are not more honorable than we are. They are not more worthy than we are. Their children are not more worthy than we are. We are the same. So why are we not investing in our community in the way that others invest in their communities? One of the things that is very important to me is that I get criticized from the whole spectrum. This is very interesting. People in the Muslim community will say to me, Sister Linda, you are too progressive and liberal. All the way, that's one side. Then the Islamophobes say, you are a radical Islamic supremacist, you're a Salafi. How could that be? How can I be those two things? I told the Islamophobe once, I said, I want you to go meet with some of the imams and have a conversation and make up your minds together of what you want to say about me, because it doesn't make sense for me to be those two extremes. And the reason why there are those two extremes is because my job, sisters and brothers, is to challenge not just those outside of our community who may be anti-Muslim or may be ignorant about Islam. It is also my job to challenge Muslims. Sisters and brothers, we have a very beautiful deen. And one of the most fundamental principles of our deen is that all of Allah's creation is to be treated with what? Dignity and respect. Allah is the judge. He is the almighty judge. You are not the judge. I do know that my Lord, the Allah that I follow, does not like to see violence against people. Any people, regardless of their faith, regardless of who they are. And when they say things about me, and in the United States, they say, you are very radical. And I always ask myself, what do they mean by that when they say what's so radical about me? Is it radical, sisters and brothers, to believe that everybody deserves access to health care? Is it radical to believe that all of us deserve to live in our community safely and freely? Is it radical to believe that we all deserve access to quality public education? Is it radical that I believe that women have our own agency and that we could make our own decisions? Is it radical that I believe that my country should be a welcoming country to immigrants and refugees from all over the world? What's so radical about the things that I think, sisters and brothers? I truly believe that the beliefs that I have are in line with the deen that I follow. Oftentimes people say to me, Sister Linda, mashallah, you're a Muslim and you're an activist. And they make those things two separate things. Muslim, activist. Sisters and brothers, there is no two separate things here. If you are a true Muslim, if you believe that Islam is a religion of not just peace, which it is, but also a deen of social justice, then all of you have to be activists. My role model, my activist, one that is actually not spoken of in this way. And I've been to Islamic schools on the weekends. My parents sent me. They taught me the seerah of our beloved Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him. And in fact, when I grew up, I observed that I actually got cheated a little bit of my Islamic education. Nobody ever told me that our beloved Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him, was an activist. I learned that as an adult. Our Prophet was a human rights activist. He was a social justice activist. He was someone who wanted to serve the poor. He, in fact, always chose to be amongst the poor. Our beloved Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him, was an environmental justice activist. He believed that the trees, the earth, the water, that Allah gave us those things as blessings, that we have to take care of the earth that is around us. So when you hear people say, oh, we're environmental justice activists, and you think that's something that is foreign to Islam, it is not foreign. We are responsible for the earth that Allah put us on. I believe that our beloved Prophet, in his encouragement of women, whether it be the women of his time or the teachings that we know now around centering women and girls and the emphasis on the education of women, he was a feminist in his own right. I don't care what the Islamophobes have to say about our beloved Prophet. I don't take my definitions or labels of our Prophet from Islamophobes. I know who my Prophet was. He was a man who was brought to this earth to be mercy for the people. He was a kind and compassionate man. I remember one time when there was a Jewish cemetery in the United States of America that was desecrated. Some people went to the cemetery and they crushed all the stones in the cemetery. And you know, I saw a news article and it moved me. It made me so emotional. I said, what kind of people would go to a cemetery where people are resting in peace and desecrate a cemetery? So me and my friend Tariq al-Masidi from Celebrate Mercy, we started a fundraiser as a gesture of solidarity with the Jewish community. And we wanted to raise $20,000, sisters and brothers, just $20,000, just as a token. Our community, mashallah, raised in almost 1.5 days, $160,000. And somebody asked me, they said, why would you as Muslims raise money for the Jewish cemetery? And I said, because I know that is what my beloved Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him, would do. You know, there was a story when our beloved Prophet Muhammad was sitting and there was a funeral procession that was passing by our beloved Prophet Muhammad. And it was a funeral of Jewish people, and the person who had passed was a Jewish person. And the man and a companion asked our beloved Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him. He said, why did you stand? That's not a Muslim. It's a Jewish man. He said, you know what our beloved Prophet Muhammad said? He said, isn't he a human? This is our Prophet. This is the kind of kindness and compassion. That is why, sisters and brothers, I will say, I will stand, I will be any day to defend my beloved Prophet Muhammad, because I know his character. And in fact, if all Muslims around the world had the character of our beloved Prophet, we would not see half the problems that we have in the Muslim world and in the Muslim communities that we are a part of. So for me, I'm not ashamed to say as a woman that while we have many women revered role models in our deen, both historically from the times of our beloved Prophet, from his wives and others, to modern times, I'm not ashamed to say that my role model too is our beloved Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him. It doesn't make me less of a woman to say that there was a man who I tried to emulate his character by being kind to people, kind to children, kind to elders, kind to people who are not of my faith. Because even our beloved Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him, knew that whether they were Muslim or not, they were still creations of the Almighty God. So what I want you to do here, and I say this as a love letter to my sisters, because let me say something about the Muslim sisters, particularly those of you who wear hijab. Now, let me be very clear here. Just because a woman wears hijab does not make her more pious than a woman who doesn't wear hijab. That's not what I'm going to say. And it's not the point that I'm going to make. So Muslim sisters in hijab and those that don't wear hijab, you are all Muslim. And you are all equal in my eyes. And hijab is a choice that is offered to all women. But for those of you who have chosen to wear hijab, you are the most courageous people living in North America. That you walk out of your home every single day donning a hijab, being a Muslim without anyone knowing or asking you if you're a Muslim. This is a symbol of courage. And I want my brothers to recognize that. I know some brothers, you may be an imam and you may wear some visible clothing, but the majority of people who are representing our deen in the supermarkets, on the streets, on the college campuses, in the hospitals, in boardrooms and meeting rooms are our sisters, and our sisters in hijab. So I want you to know that I am proud of you, and that I hope that you see this as a semblance of our deen, a deen that is rooted in courage, and that you wearing that hijab for me is the hope that we need in this moment. So don't ever question yourself. Know that you are a reflection of our community and that your courage is inspiration to all of us. I'm going to say this to both sisters and brothers. There's something also that Muslims say to me all the time that I want to clarify. Sometimes I will be invited to a masjid or to some sort of symposium or even to a convention. And people, and this happened here too, by the way. Sister Linda, I want you to talk about Muslim rights in Islam or Muslim women's rights or talk about Muslim women's empowerment. That's okay. And that's important. And the reason I think that sometimes, and not here at ICNA, because I've done this many topics at ICNA conventions across the country and across the United States, but some of the smaller masajid will say, Sister Linda, we don't do politics. We don't like to be political in our masjid. Just talk about Muslim women. We want to encourage the sisters, but don't talk about politics. We don't do politics. This is what I want to say to Muslims in North America. If you woke up this morning and you are breathing and you are Muslim, you are political. You have no choice, sisters and brothers, but to be political. You do not have the luxury as Muslims in North America to say, today, I'm not going to be political. You know why? Because our deen is politicized. Our prophet is politicized. Our communities are being politicized. People running for office and running for higher office using our communities as scapegoats so that they can win elections. You have no choice but to be political. Now, what does it mean to be political? It means to engage in the democratic process. So, for example, in the United States of America, my focus in the United States is to register every single eligible Muslim to vote. Let me explain to you why that's important. Because the Muslims sometimes were not consistent people. And consistency and persistency is very important to me. I want to understand why Muslims will say, MashaAllah, in Syria, there was a revolution, they wanted their right to vote. MashaAllah, the Egyptians went to Tahrir Square, and they want a right to vote in elections, and they wanted a free democratic process. In this country, MashaAllah, the Muslims are, and you know what we do in North America? We watch the news, MashaAllah, right? Guess what? Those Muslims have to stand up to snipers and to tanks, and in some places, powerful militaries. Here in North America, what do? You go into the polling booth, people say good morning, good afternoon, Thank you for being here. You go into the poll, you fill out a piece of paper for 2 minutes, you go home. There's no sniper, there's no military. Why, sisters and brothers, do we have the right to vote in the countries that we're a part of? We will root Muslims on across the world who are literally risking their life at the opportunity to have a free election. But in Canada and in the United States of America, the Muslims, I don't want to vote this time. I don't like this one, I don't like that one. Sisters and brothers, this for me, if you want to know the truth, is my ultimate frustrations with Muslims. You have the luxury of living in a country where you already have the right to vote. Somebody already sacrificed decades ago so that you have the right to vote. And we take that for granted. And then the Muslims will say, Sister Linda, how did this happen? How did they elect this guy to be our president? How do they elect this racist guy to be in the parliament? How did this happen? You know how this happens? When the Muslims stay home, that's how it happens. So the least that we can do, sisters and brothers, is start talking to our family members when the elections come around. You know what you do? Don't go by yourself. Take your wife. The wife take your husband. Take your children with you. Let even the young ones go. Let them experience what it feels like to be part of the democratic process, to make them understand that they have every right to participate in the democratic process. And in many parts of North America, even in Canada, there are places where there are high concentrations of Muslims. Like, for example, in Michigan, many Muslims in Michigan, many Muslims in Texas and in New York and in California and many places. If the Muslims go to the polls, we can help our nation do the right thing. You know, in Michigan, if you remember, I had come to Canada actually that year in 2016. I was working on the Bernie Sanders campaign. And I'm pretty sure Bernie Sanders is going to run again, just in case you were all following. In 2016, Bernie Sanders won the Michigan primary. So he beat Hillary in Michigan in the primary. Then when the general election came, when Bernie lost the primary and then it became Hillary against Trump, guess what happened in Michigan? Trump won Michigan. You know by how many votes he won? 10,000 votes. You know how many Muslim registered voters are in the state of Michigan? 250,000. So we can't always put the responsibility on everybody else. We too, sisters and brothers, have power and influence, and we, as Muslims, always use our power and influence for the common good. So I'm asking you, whether you are a Canadian, whether you crossed the border from the United States to be here, I need you to do one very simple thing. When there is an election, go to the polls. Very simple. My kind of organizing is not everybody's kind of organizing. This past month in the United States, I got arrested 4 times in Washington, D.C. That's not for everybody. I'm not asking you all to engage in acts of civil disobedience and be arrested. I'm not asking you to organize the largest single-day demonstration in American history like the Women's March. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm not actually asking you to do hard work. I'm going to ask you to do 3 things. Number 1, if you are not registered to vote and you are eligible to be a registered voter, I need you to leave here and figure out how to do that. I don't know how it works in Canada, but I'm pretty sure it's a similar process. For those of you who think that you're registered to vote, confirm that you are registered to vote. Something they do in the United States, not everywhere, is somebody will say, Sister Linda, wallah, I'm registered to vote. And then when the day of the election comes, they call me and say, Sister Linda, I went to the polls, my name wasn't there. So check your registration. Maybe you moved addresses. Maybe you got married and now you have a different name. Register to vote, confirm your registration to vote. And then, of course, obviously, I want you to vote when the time comes. Number 2, I want you to invest in your community organizations, and in particular in organizations like ICNA. By the way, nobody at ICNA told me to say this. I'm serious. I'm serious. Wallahi al-azim, nobody asked me to say this. And the reason why I say support your local organizations is because we need them right now. We need them now more than ever. And let me tell you, I work in the nonprofit. We call it the nonprofit. I don't know what you call it here. Same, nonprofit world. We don't get paid a lot of money. And sometimes people in the nonprofit work 14-hour days. And it's okay that we don't get paid a lot of money. You know why? Because we pray that we will be rewarded by Allah in the hereafter. And that is more important to me than a salary or a nice salary. So while our brothers and sisters are working hard to stand up to Islamophobes, to organize these types of spaces where we can come together as Muslims, where our children can meet one another, where we can empower one another, where they are doing programming, where they are doing charity services here, not just for Muslims, but for all people that live here, that we support them in those endeavors. Because they can't organize and ask you for money all at the same time. Sometimes in our community, we just have to naturally understand that we have to support our community organizations. And then the last thing that I need you all to do, this is very important, this is the most important thing. I need you in this moment to be unapologetically Muslim. I want you to be visibly proud to be a Muslim, and I'll tell you why. These types of people who are standing outside, they have a mission. They don't just do this for no reason. They're very calculated people. You may not think so. You may be laughing at them. But they are very calculated people. You know what they want? They want to intimidate us. They want to intimidate groups like ICNA from putting gatherings like this together. They want to intimidate ICNA from choosing the speakers to come to their convention. Nobody gets to decide who we bring to our stages. We don't tell them who to bring to their convention. They don't get to tell us who we bring to our conventions. They also want to scare our young people. They want our young people to question themselves. They want our young people to question whether or not they want to be unapologetically Muslim. So I'm asking the parents in the room, those of you with children, it is your responsibility to be unapologetically Muslim so your children can be unapologetically Muslim. That you tell your child every single day that they have everything to be proud of as a Muslim. That they are blessed that Allah chose for them to be Muslims. And I will say this to all of you, that we as a Muslim community have everything to be proud of. We have contributed to the nations that we are a part of. We live in great nations because of our contributions, and that we will not be silenced nor intimidated by any opposition. And that our children are worthy, we are worthy, and that we are going to be whole Muslims. Not half Muslims because they want us to be half Muslims, whole Muslims. And I want you leaving here understanding that we practice a faith of love, compassion, kindness, generosity, peace, and social justice for all people. Because justice in Islam is not just us. Justice is offered to all people and to all those who live in our society. I am grateful to the ICNA family and ICNA Canada for having me here. May Allah bless you all. May Allah protect you, protect your children and your families. May He protect our religious institutions. May He instill in our hearts the moral courage so that we can be unapologetically Muslim, so generations of Muslims can come after us. I pray for the brothers and sisters of ICNA that Allah protect their families, that Allah continue to guide them and make them successful. I am grateful to be here, and inshallah I will be back very soon here in Canada. Assalamu alaikum.
Did you know there are over 200 million orphans worldwide? Every day, 5,760 more children become orphans. Every one of those orphans is born full of potential, but they won't get there without your help. Would you help an orphan reach their dreams? Sponsor an orphan now for only $1 per day. Visit ICNAReliefCanada.ca for details and to donate. ICNA Relief Canada, serving humanity since 1997.